Istanbul, at the edge of Europe and Asia, where two continents meet across a narrow stretch of water, lies a city unlike any other. A city whose streets have echoed with the footsteps of emperors, sultans, crusaders, and merchants. A city that has been conquered, reborn, renamed, and yet never broken. This is Istanbul, once Byzantium, later Constantinople, forever the city between worlds. Few cities on earth can claim such a destiny. Its lifeblood is the Bosphorus Strait, a ribbon of water that connects the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, making it a prize for traders, warriors, and kings. Whoever controlled this city held the keys to worlds, the gateway between East and West, between Europe and Asia, between Christianity and Islam. But Istanbul is more than geography. It is a living witness to the rise and fall of empires. Here, Roman legions built their fortresses, Byzantine emperors crowned their successors, and Ottoman sultans ruled over lands stretching 3 continents. Its skyline tells the tale. The domes of Hagia Sophia, the minarets of Suleiman's mosques, the walls of Constantine, all layered upon one another like pages in a book written over 2,600 years. And yet, this city has not only survived history, it has shaped it. From ancient myths to modern revolutions, Istanbul has been at the center of the world's greatest dramas. But how did it all begin? How did a small Greek colony, clinging to a narrow peninsula, rise to become the beating heart of empires? To uncover that story, we must go back, long before the Ottomans, before Constantine, before Christianity itself, to the moment a band of settlers carved their destiny into the shores of the Bosphorus. Long before it was called Istanbul or Constantinople, this city was known as Byzantium. Its story begins in the 7th century BCE, when Greek colonists from the city of Megara sailed across the Aegean in search of new lands. Led by their leader Byzas, they reached the narrow strait where Europe and Asia nearly touched. The Oracle of Delphi had told Byzas to settle at the land opposite the blind. When he arrived here, he understood why. The settlers of nearby Chalcedon had foolishly overlooked this perfect site, choosing the wrong shore. Byzas claimed the superior ground, and Byzantium was born. The location was everything. Byzantium sat on a triangle of land, surrounded by the waters of the Golden Horn and the Sea of Marmara, with the Bosphorus flowing past its gates. It was a natural fortress, a naval stronghold, and a gateway to trade routes that linked the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. From the very beginning, Byzantium was more than a city. It was a crossroads of worlds. For centuries, Byzantium thrived as a modest but wealthy Greek polis. It minted its own coins, built temples, and grew rich from tolls on passing ships. Its fate, however, was tied to larger powers. When Rome expanded eastward, Byzantium could not remain independent. By the 1st century CE, it was fully absorbed into the Roman Empire. Yet even under Roman control, Byzantium's importance only grew. Emperors recognized its strategic value, especially as the western half of the empire began to weaken. One emperor in particular would see in Byzantium not just a city, but a new capital, one destined to outshine even Rome itself. And in the year 330 CE, that emperor's vision would change the city forever. In 330 CE, Emperor Constantine the Great made a decision that would reshape history. Looking at Byzantium's commanding position, he envisioned it not as a provincial city, but as the beating heart of a renewed Roman Empire. He rebuilt and expanded it, adorned it with palaces, forums, and mighty walls, and named it Nova Roma, New Rome. But the world would soon know it by another name, Constantinople, the city of Constantine. Constantine poured vast wealth into his new capital. He commissioned the Hippodrome for grand chariot races, the Forum of Constantine as a center of civic life, and a network of aqueducts, baths, and basilicas. The city sparkled with marble and gold, its streets echoing with the clash of soldiers and the chants of priests. Here, East met West, and pagan Rome gave way to a rising Christian empire. Constantinople quickly became more than just a capital. It was the shield of Rome's eastern provinces. Its walls, stretching across the land and reinforced by the sea on 3 sides, made it nearly impregnable. As the Western Roman Empire staggered under barbarian invasions, Constantinople stood tall, guarding the empire's wealth and culture. But it wasn't just military strength that gave Constantinople power. It was a hub of commerce, drawing spices from India, silks from China, and grain from Egypt. Gold and silver flowed through its markets, while philosophers, priests, and merchants mingled in its bustling squares. When the Western Roman Empire finally collapsed in 476 CE, the world turned its eyes eastward. Rome had fallen, but in Constantinople, Rome lived on. The city became the heart of what we now call the Byzantine Empire, a realm that would endure for 1,000 years. Yet survival came with new dangers, for Constantinople's Golden Age would soon be tested by fire, faith, and rebellion. With the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, Constantinople stood as the last beacon of Rome. From its mighty walls, the Byzantine Empire emerged, Roman in law and tradition, but shaped by Greek language and Orthodox faith. For centuries, the city flourished, dazzling visitors with its splendor and resilience. At the height of this golden age stood Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century. Determined to restore Rome's lost glory, he launched campaigns to reclaim Italy, North Africa, and Spain. But his true legacy was within Constantinople itself. After the devastating Nika riots nearly burned the city to the ground, Justinian rebuilt it on an even grander scale. The crowning jewel of his reign was the Hagia Sophia, a church whose massive dome seemed to float upon light, inspiring awe for generations. Constantinople's strategic location kept wealth flowing in. Caravans from Asia and ships from the Mediterranean passed through its gates, bringing silk, spices, and precious stones. Its scholars preserved the wisdom of Greece and Rome, ensuring that knowledge survived even as the rest of Europe slipped into the so-called Dark Ages. But the city's brilliance also attracted enemies. Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, and later the Seljuk Turks tested its defenses. Time and again, Constantinople endured, thanks in part to its formidable Theodosian walls and the terrifying weapon known as Greek fire, a substance that burned even upon water. Yet survival came at a cost. Religious controversies, court intrigues, and economic strains slowly weakened the empire. By the time of the Crusades, Constantinople was no longer the unshakable giant it once had been. In 1204, its fate took a shocking turn. Instead of defending the city, Christian crusaders stormed it, looting its treasures and shattering its glory. But this was not the end, for Constantinople would rise again, though shadows of conquest loomed closer than ever before. The sack of 1204 CE left Constantinople a broken city. Its churches were stripped, its relics scattered across Europe, and its once proud empire reduced to fragments. Though the Byzantines managed to reclaim the city in 1261 CE, it was never the same. The Queen of Cities had lost her crown jewels, and the empire clung to survival rather than dominance. Meanwhile, a new power was rising to the east. The Ottoman Turks, under leaders like Osman and Orhan, expanded rapidly, conquering Byzantine lands piece by piece. Constantinople became an island of empire, its influence shrinking with every passing decade. By the 15th century, the once mighty capital was little more than a shadow of its past. Still proud, still magnificent, but surrounded on all sides by Ottoman might. The city's defenses, however, remained legendary. The Theodosian walls, stretching across its landward side, had defied countless enemies for nearly a millennium. But in 1453 CE, a 21-year-old Ottoman sultan named Mehmed II, later known as the Conqueror, brought something new to the battlefield: gunpowder cannons. Towering weapons that could shatter stone, they thundered against Constantinople's walls with relentless fury. For 53 days, the city resisted. Priests prayed in the Hagia Sophia, soldiers fought desperately on the walls, and citizens clung to the hope that help from the west would arrive. But none came. On May 29, 1453, the Ottomans finally breached the defenses. Constantinople fell, and with it, the last remnant of the Roman Empire. The world was stunned. The fall of Constantinople not only marked the end of Byzantium, but also redirected global history, forcing Europeans to seek new routes to the east, sparking the age of exploration. But for the Ottomans, this was only the beginning. Constantinople would be reborn as Istanbul, the beating heart of an empire that would dominate for centuries. When Mehmed II entered the fallen city in 1453, he did not destroy it, he transformed it. Constantinople became Istanbul, the jewel of the Ottoman Empire, and the seat of a dynasty that would rule for nearly 5 centuries. The Hagia Sophia was converted into a grand mosque, and new minarets rose into the sky, proclaiming the triumph of Islam. The Ottomans revived the wounded city. Palaces, mosques, bazaars, and fountains filled its streets. Under Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century, Istanbul reached its zenith. The Topkapi Palace became the heart of imperial power, while master architect Mimar Sinan reshaped the skyline with masterpieces like the Süleymaniye Mosque. Istanbul was not just a capital, it was a symbol of Ottoman might, a place where cultures, languages, and religions intertwined. Strategically positioned, Istanbul controlled trade between east and west. Caravans carrying spices, silk, and jewels met ships laden with grain and gold. The Grand Bazaar, one of the world's oldest and largest markets, bustled with merchants from every corner of the globe. To walk its halls was to see the empire's wealth on display. But even great empires faced decline. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Ottomans were called the sick man of Europe. Wars with Russia, nationalist uprisings in the Balkans, and European colonial ambitions chipped away at their power. Despite reforms and modernization attempts, the empire stumbled into the catastrophe of World War I. In 1923, the Ottomans were no more. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk declared the birth of the Republic of Turkey, and the capital shifted to Ankara. Yet Istanbul, though no longer the seat of power, remained the soul of the nation, a bridge between past and future. But Istanbul's story was not over. In the 20th century, the city would reinvent itself once again, standing at the crossroads of modernity and tradition. With the fall of the Ottoman Empire in 1923, Istanbul entered a new chapter. The newly founded Republic of Turkey, under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, chose Ankara as its capital, a symbolic break from the imperial past. Yet Istanbul remained the nation's cultural and economic heart, its history woven into every stone and street. Through the 20th century, the city grew rapidly. Its population swelled, its neighborhoods expanded, and its skyline transformed with modern bridges and skyscrapers. Yet even as Istanbul embraced change, it preserved its ancient soul. The Hagia Sophia, the Blue Mosque, the Topkapi Palace, and the bustling Grand Bazaar stood as reminders of empires long gone, yet never forgotten. The city also became a stage for political turbulence. From military coups to waves of migration, Istanbul reflected the struggles and triumphs of a modernizing Turkey. In recent decades, it has risen as a global hub once more, a city of over 15 million people, where East truly meets West. The Bosphorus Bridge and Marmaray Tunnel physically unite Europe and Asia, while Istanbul's art, music, and food draw millions of visitors every year. But Istanbul is not just a city of history, it is a city of the present. In 2020, the Hagia Sophia, once a church and then a museum, was reconverted into a mosque, igniting global debate. Today, in 2025, Istanbul stands at the center of conversations about identity, politics, and the balance between tradition and modernity. For nearly 2,700 years, Istanbul has been Byzantium, Constantinople, and the Ottoman capital, a city conquered, reborn, and reinvented. And through all its transformations, one truth remains: Istanbul is eternal, because some cities don't just witness history, they become history itself.